Hi, it's Edie, and today I'm actually going to give you a nutshell version, a smaller version of the ridiculously long video that I shot for you last week. Actually, I think it's been over a week and a half ago that I shot this video. It was entirely too long, and somehow I must have thought that you guys needed to hear the entire story, but you don't. I'm actually going to keep it really short for you, and I hope that you're going to be able to apply it to your own lives, your own relationship. So I'm an adult human being, and I did something that is incredibly childish. I brought a dog home, a second dog. We already have one dog, and I brought a second dog home. And mind you, before this, my husband had expressed before many times that he did not want a second dog, that he didn't want to deal with the hassles of a second dog. So when I made the decision that I wanted to bring a second dog home, I knew this in advance and thought, I'm just not going to include him in the discussion because I know that he's going to say no. So I knew my husband was not going to react favorably to this. I had no idea to the degree that he was going to react. So when I did something incredibly childish and completely opposite of the behavior that I want to have in myself for my relationship, then he responded with an equally childish and opposite behavior than what he wants to be in terms of a partner with me. So we got into a really big fight, and you don't have to get too excited. Our fights are not that dramatic. Our fights are not that exciting. There's not screaming and yelling. When my husband and I have a big disagreement, there's a whole lot of ignoring each other, which I can assure you is way worse than just screaming it out. But there was a whole lot of ignoring each other. You know, he started out ignoring me, then I, decided now I'm mad, I'm gonna ignore you right back, and super ineffective, but in our case it needed to be done for the bigger lessons that were learned. So ultimately, here's the thing. When I'm working one-on-one with a client and we're talking about their relationship, I always talk about making sure that they, as an individual, that they are behaving based on the person that they want to be. Because when we're functioning at that level, when we're doing things based on who we want to be as a person, regardless of what the other person is doing, we're always going to make better decisions from that standpoint. So it would have been really awesome of me to self-coach in that situation and go into it with that perspective of being the person that I want to be, and I didn't do that. And then in turn, he didn't respond that way back to me. So we were both acting based on emotion, based on reacting to each other's poor behavior, rather than really taking a time out to say, what do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be with my partner? And how, and take that into the situation. I'll tell you, had I gone into it that way, I would have made the phone call, even though I know my husband, or I predicted my husband would have said no to the dog. But I chose not to even include him on that conversation. And, looking back, of course, hindsight, you can always say, well, that was a bad idea. But ultimately, had I just taken that little bit of a pause to think, who do I want to be? Do I want to be the type of person that just forces somebody to do something that they have expressed that they didn't want to do? Or do I want to have an adult conversation where we're both kind of, weighing the situation and deciding what's best for everybody involved? Because what happened is I forced his hand, and when I forced his hand, he reacted in a way that was like, I'm not backing down, and I'm going to throw a fit and treat you poorly by ignoring you, and I'm going to pout until I get my way. So he threw his adult version of a tantrum, I threw my adult version of the tantrum, and we didn't get anywhere for about 2 days. It was really destructive to our relationship just for those 2 days, and it was really destructive to the whole family. Fortunately, I did some self-coaching at the end of one of those 2 days. I'd given myself enough time and space, and sometimes we need that. Maybe that's fine too, but ultimately getting to the point where we were able to have a discussion and talk about what happened in terms of, me saying I shouldn't have done what I did, but also, me being able to ask him, are you going to throw a fit every time that you don't get what you want in order for you to get what you want? And then it ended up being that that wasn't the case either. So 2 things I want to leave with you, because I really think this is going to be helpful in terms of relationships and in terms of standing up for yourself as well. These are the lessons I got from the situation with my husband. Thing 1 is go at your relationship being the best you that you want to be. Function at that level. Function at the level of what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of partner do I want to be? And that's the way I'm going to act. Give space for that to happen and try less to react to situations and respond more than react based on the outcome that you want. There was a greater lesson that that particular situation taught me, and that lesson is directed at all of us who tend to be maybe more easygoing in terms of our wants and our desires in a relationship, where what it is that we want, we might push a little bit and push and say what we want. We're getting some resistance maybe, so we tend to give in. Part of that's okay if it's not something that's super important to us. If it's something that really is no big deal, then we let it go. But it's when there are things that really are big deals in terms of a lifestyle that we are just being okay with because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or we don't want to rock the boat, or because the other person, really strongly doesn't want that, and so we just kind of let them have what they want. I caution against that. It's setting yourself up for some pretty big problems down the road, because you'll ignore those and push them aside, and push them aside is no big deal, and then one day you realize all these things that really were a big deal to you that you just kind of let go for the sake of the relationship. And I don't think I'm speaking to a small amount of you. I think that there's a lot of us that do that. I know I have in my past relationships in a big way, because I was so worried about pleasing the other person, doing everything that they wanted to make them happy, that the disregard I had for myself and my own wants was huge. With my husband, not so much. Although this particular event with the dog, the silly dog, is that it brought up a lot of moments where I realized I had held some resentments from other stuff that really were a big deal to me that I had kind of let go. Now, I'm kind of a believer in all things happen for a reason, and so had I began that situation a different way, I wouldn't have got the huge lesson that I got from it. It applies to me personally, but some of you might be able to resonate with it as well, so I do want to share it, even though it's incredibly personal to me and not something that I've shared before, because I'd actually really denied this for 15 years. And the situation with my husband, because I was taken to that point of having to give up something that I really wanted, which was this puppy, even though the circumstances around it were very different, brought up all these emotions of when I gave a child up for adoption. And what I realized in going through this fight, this argument with my husband, and what he wanted versus what I wanted, and then the stance that he took in terms of, I'm going to throw a fit unless I get what I want, which is not this animal with us, brought up memories of that situation from 15 years ago. And what I had done there, which I had to finally own after all these years, was I was tucked into something I didn't want to do. I've denied that for all those years. I've, insisted that I was strong enough. What kind of person could I be if I was tucked into something like that by another individual in a relationship? I couldn't live with myself under those terms in that situation, so I chose to believe that it was my choice. And even though the situations were vastly different, I was bringing that in. I was bringing those emotions in that I hadn't dealt with. The reality, truthfully, and that I hadn't dealt with before, and bringing that into this situation. So the reason I bring that up, there's 2 reasons. First one is, be aware of what you could possibly be giving up based on what someone else wants. It's easy to say have boundaries of what you're willing to do and not do, because you know, I would have thought that I had those kind of boundaries before, and just the self-esteem then was very different from the self-esteem that I have now. But truthfully, there's a lot of adult women that I know that aren't seeing what it is that we want, aren't saying what it is that we're not okay with, the changes that we really want to make, and aren't using our voice for that. And not only is it building up resentments that our partners don't even know about, but the person that you want to be with is somebody who wants you to have the things that you feel the strongest about, and you want the same thing for them. And so ask yourself, check in and see if that's really happening in your relationship. And if it's not, you know, make some requests. And if the requests are faced with a closed door, or you're not even given the chance for an adult conversation about it, you're not even given a chance for the negotiation, you know, ask yourself, is that something I'm willing to, is that a way that I'm willing to live? And only you can answer that question. I'm not willing to live that way. And so that's something I had to face with my husband 2 weeks ago. You know, just having that conversation to say, hey, is this how it's going to be? Your way or the highway type of thing. And it wasn't until we had calmed down, you know, from the situation and had the space to have the conversation that should have happened in the first place that I know that that's not who he is, that's not who he wants to be. But had he held his ground and said, no, there's going to be certain things that I feel strongly about, and if they completely clashed with the things that were important to me, you know, that's something I would have had to decide. I won't be in a relationship where my voice doesn't count. I refuse. I've been in it before. I'm not going back there. And so it's my responsibility to use that voice and not play games and not be passive aggressive in order to get my way. But to speak up for what it is that I want. And that's my fault if I don't do that in this current relationship. If I get to a point in a relationship where I do use my voice and it's shut down or ignored, it's my responsibility to either get out of it or take ownership for staying in. And so that was a good lesson for me in this whole thing. And I hope that helps you. I hope that situation helps you, you know, both sides of it. Be really aware and attentive of the things that you are saying yes to that you don't really want to be saying yes to. And be really aware of when you're using games or passive aggression to get your way, and function in your relationship from a place of who it is you want to be, the type of person that you want to be, and you're going to attract that person to you. You're going to attract those qualities out of your partner as well. So I'm Edie K. I hope that helped you. I hope you got something out of that crazy long dramatic video, and I look forward to talking with you next week. I'd love to hear your comments. I'm sure that this is going to stir up a lot of comments, and I'd love to see below. I'll answer as many as I can. So have an